Hello, everyone. The show today will be a conversation with Professor Yonatan Adler of Ariel University, Israel, author of Origins of Judaism, and it will also be with other scholars of the Bible. After I had started to read Adler's recent book and an article about it by Andrew Lawler, I decided to have this conversation with him and other scholars of the Bible because I saw that I could plug a gap in biblical scholarship. The book, published by Yale University Press, is entitled Origins of Judaism, and the article is Judaism a younger religion than previously thought? It was published at Smithsonian. As we grapple with the fallout of the Kanye West and Kyrie Irving affairs, I would salute Adler for his effort to write a necessary book, as we need to keep everyone interested in the Bible and by extension the Israelites and Jews, which the book interrogated. Well, the elephant in the room has to be named sometimes. The claim on the Israelites is as much an issue as every other thing that is mentioned, still being mentioned about the affair in question. And I must also thank Lawler for the very illuminating article. I also read another by Ariel David, which was published in Haaretz. It's a good book, and the articles are good. In summarizing Adler's book, Lawler wrote, based on 15 years of studying textual and archaeological evidence, Yonatan Adler of Ariel University in the West Bank concludes that ordinary Judeans didn't consistently celebrate Passover, hold the Sabbath sacred, or practice other traditional forms of Jewish ritual until a century or so before the birth of Jesus. And Lawler thought, if Adler's theory proves correct, then Judaism is at best Christianity's elder sibling and the younger sibling to the religions of ancient Greece and Rome. Would we then be right, I ask, to think that Adler must have thought that Judaism was the religion of the Israelites? One can think so because of statements like Abraham was the first Jew, the Jews left Egypt during the Exodus, God gave Moses and the Jews 10 commandments at Mount Sinai, which more or less have become normative. Jews refer to Judaism. Adler, according to Lawler, could be said to have taught Judeans, I don't know why not Israelites, may not have had an organized religion with systematic rules, traditions, and values. He could also be said to have concluded that the people known as the people of Israel, whom the Judeans and modern Jews are viewed as part of, had no clearly defined organized religion with systematic structure until the emergence of Judaism a few years before the birth of Jesus. Here I come in. No. The Israelite society was aware of many of the rules of the Israelite religion, and some, if not many Israelites, kept many of the traditions and customs of the religion. The situation at their time would not be so much different than the situation at the present time. The number of Jews, Christians, and Igbos that observe all or most of the rules of their religions are far less than the number of those who do not know and observe. But there is sufficiently strong evidence that shows Israelite society had a religion. Its traditions were systematically followed and observed. And I would agree that archaeology and texts missed this. We have a responsibility to look for the Israelite religion, because it is after we find it and the Israelites that we can determine if its ways were followed and observed. What was that Israelite religion? Archaeology and texts can only tell us so much about it because 5,000 years, 4,000 years ago was a very long time ago. The Bible, which offers us a glimpse of the period, is not always detailed enough. And we must not overlook the theological flavor in the Bible. Historically, great. Historically, accurate to a great extent, but there is also theology. The prophet Elijah had to be taught that Israel still contained 7,000 that had not bowed to Baal. As the righteous prophet he was, the Israelites as a whole had become irredeemable because they allowed even one of their own to become evil. So, we still need additional help to know more about the Israelites and their religion. To know more about that religion, we have to try and find where it is still living. We have to find the Israelite religion as a living religion. Fortunately, it is still a living religion, but unfortunately, it is living among a people that have been serially and unfortunately misrepresented and misconstructed throughout history. Igbos have been covered with their identities, Africans, blacks, pagans, heathens, and others which we are not relatable to their culture and true identity. Accordingly, the light that would have been derived from Omenana, their religion and culture, is deemed for everyone, including themselves. Most Igbos at the present time also say they are what they are not, because that's what everyone says they are. Omenana is the Igbo and the Israelite religion and culture. And from what we inherited, it was a religion clearly defined with boundaries, rules, traditions, laws, and ethics, and all the other characteristics of modern religions, including what could be considered a name. And I would say without hesitation that 4,000 years ago, it existed and was widely practiced and followed. Very importantly, it is still a living religion. So everything I am saying and writing can be verified. I'm sure that Omenana existed at the time of Moses, Aaron, Joshua, Elimelech, Naomi, Boaz, Ruth, because Omenana was the descriptive that God and Moses coined for Israel's way of life at Mount Sinai. Omenana rendered in English language simply turns up, quote, way of life you shall do in the land. Turn to Deuteronomy 6:1 and meet exactly the same statement and worldview. Examine and compare traditions, customs, and worldview of Omenana and the way of life we see in the Bible, and you will see them match identically. I have written and published furiously on the subjects of the Israelite origins of the Igbo people and their religion and culture. The Igbo religion can fill all the gaps that exist in understanding the Bible and the Israelites. That texts and archaeology would not be able or have not been able to fulfill, but because we generally know only about and usually only turn towards the West, i.e., Europe and quote, white, to understand history and culture. As we can see from, if Adler's theory proves correct, then Judaism is at best Christianity's elder sibling and younger cousin, and the younger cousin to the religions of ancient Greece and Rome. At present, only very few persons in the world know about this very easily verifiable verity, which is that Omenana easily tells us those things archaeology and texts fail to tell us about the Israelites. All the religions law are mentioned are European, Western, and quote, white. And I must say, we are where we are because of the very weak and faulty foundations on which the academic studies of religion, history, and culture were built. Meanwhile, even in the Bible, we see records of the Israelites migrating to and fro between lands that could be considered parts of what became Africa and the Middle East, from which, by the way, Their linear and cultural descendants inevitably moved into the hinterlands of Africa and into what became known as Asia and Europe. This is significant. They moved into the hinterlands of Africa and into what became known as Asia and Europe. This is what history reveals. We have to face history and not our emotions. Omenana is the traditional religion of the Igbo or Igbo people, whom they are remnants who still identify themselves as Igbo or Igbo may still number up to 50 millions. They were called Biafrans between 1967 to 1970 after the state they helped to form with hopes to use it to defend themselves against ethnic cleansings in the modern country called Nigeria. Omenana is still the only religion of many of the 50 million plus Igbos and the subliminal religion of Igbos who became Christianized during Igbo colonization by the British Empire. And it is the religion that millions of people who see themselves as descendants of Igbos in the Sierra Leonean, Liberian, Ivorian, Gabonese, Sao Tomean, Equatorial Guinean, African American, Caribbean, and Afro-Latino populations can validly look to as their ancestral religion. Former NBA star Amare Stoudemire, who converted to Orthodox Judaism, popular American televangelist T.D. Jakes, famous film star Forrest Whitaker, chief rabbi of the Israelites and spiritual leader of the commandment keepers, Kappas Funye, African-American Orthodox Jewish rabbi Mordecai Ben Avraham, African-American Karaite Hakam rabbi in training James Walker, famous African-American pastor and founder of Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, Washington Dumisani, Bishop William Brown of Boom Church, Pastor Haron K. Kawans of Denver, Colorado, Israeli activist Rudy Rockman, South African Jewish activist Alon Fisher, and Hebrew Israelite activist Chief Zion Lex, and Rabbi Harry Rosenberg are aware of the Israelite provenance of the Igbo people and have written and spoken about it. Professor Walter Isaac of University of Tennessee, Knoxville, Swiss-Israeli anthropologist Dr. Daniel Lees, author of Jewish Identity Among the Igbo of Nigeria, Nigeria's Lost Tribe, Israel's Lost Tribe and the Question of Belonging in the Jewish State, Professor Michael Alexander of University of California, Riverside, Dr. Yonatan Adler, chairman of Obadiah Alliance and head of the Beit Din, which ruled in 2022 that Igbos are linear descendants of the biblical Israelites, Kulanu Inc. founder Dr. Jack Zeller, South African Jew and anthropologist Caroline Rosenberg, Israeli activist Yirmiyahu Danzig, independent Jewish scholar Michael Levin, and a growing number of Jews are even more importantly aware of what I wrote about Omenana as the Israelite religion. By the way, the knowledge is slowly gaining ground among Igbos too. California-based Emeka Maduawese is a fountain of information, textual information about what I'm saying. Looking expressly and only at what we could see as hints of Israelite or Jewish identity by rap mogul and businessman Kanye West and star basketballer Kyrie Irving, minus the elements that are deemed anti-Semitic in what they shared, I would say they were aware of something, a verity, which is that some African Americans came from Israelite stock, but probably because they were learning from sources that need to be re-evaluated and filtered, they shared ideas that mixed up that verity and some unrelated things. They might not have gained attention if they had only stated and shared tweets that say, "We are Israelites because our ancestors were Igbos," and not gone beyond this. But they would have stated an unimpeachable fact. Amare Stoudemire and T.D. Jakes had said exactly the same words. Contrary to the findings and observations of Adler, Igbos as Hebrews, which by the way is an English term for the Igbo language term Igbo, Israelites and Judeans observed the Sabbath. In my community, it is on the Ekeuku Onhoru days. They observed Passover. They observed atonement. They observed peace offerings. They observed sin offerings. They performed Sukkot Jubilee and many of the other traditions of the Hebrew Bible that Lawler noted that Adler thought Judeans were likely not aware of. Olaude Equiano, one of the greatest abolitionists, wrote and published about Igbos and the bitter herbs of Passover in 1789. Those bitter herbs of the Israelites ate over 4,000 years ago in Egypt are still eaten throughout history and almost daily by Igbos up to 2022 as Onubu and Otaze. To Igbos, a Levite must still carry out purifications before the body of a person who committed suicide by hanging can be disposed of. Levitical communities still exist in Igbo land. The Igbos are still struggling to define the place of the sanctuary servant priests. Judaism's secondary scriptures know them as Netinim. To Igbos, they are Osu. Chinua Achebe, late Africa's greatest novelist, explored the plight of the Osu in his Things Fall Apart and No Longer at Ease. Both were published over half a century ago. Igbos are familiar with and retain some of the ways of Abraham that align with what we call the reforms of Moses. Many of the listed traditions of Igbos, whose language is, by the way, infused with biblical and Hebrew idioms, are still performed and observed systematically as Igbo Omenana traditions, which demonstrate that they were even more rigidly followed and adhered to in older times, i.e. in biblical Israelite times. Everything I have said and written can still be seen by onlookers and researchers, even though the Igbo society has been in steady decline for decades due to loss of culture, colonization, genocides, and again, loss of culture. Now I must brace up and give my own opinion about the age of Judaism. The religion Samaritanism, that is the religion of the Samaritan group, Karaism, and the one Adler specifically looked at, i.e. Rabbinical Judaism, have very deep hooks in the heart of Omenana. And they retain so much of his religion and culture that rather than try to find the dates they were born, I would say they could be called its daughter religions. I noted that I have written and published furiously about the subject in Focus. The following are some of my works. They are all available at Amazon and in Nigeria, Igbo London, in bookstores. The Hebrew Igbo Republics brings the Bible alive for you if you are interested. This describes the progress the Igbos made in their republics in lands astride the River Niger before the British Empire destroyed everything. This is like the Hebrew Igbo republics, an intercultural study of Omenana, Judaism, and other Israelite traditions. This is what would have been if the leadership of the Igbos, or this describes what happened when the leadership of the Igbos and the leaderships of the Jews, Samaritans, and Karaites did not come together. I talked about Obadiah alliance and his ruling that Igbos are linear descendants of the Israelites, and I used this opportunity to explore the origins of various groups that we see as Israelites. These are about the servant priests, the Netinim, who became the Osu among the Igbo people. This is also about the same Osu. Most people in the world do not know that anti-Semitism dogs the footsteps of the Igbos, but it does. It has even led to genocide. The map on the back of this book is of my own DNA. The map that you see on the back of this book was produced by My Heritage. It's the map of my own DNA. You could see the Middle Eastern identification larger than even Nigeria and East Africa. This traces the history of African Americans, Caribbeans, their connections to the Igbos, and Igbo connections to the Israelites. This addresses Igbo Americans who could become to the Igbos what the American Jewish community is to Jews. I wrote from afflicted Judah. I remember my past in Judah. I remember that I'm a reincarnated being. I had experiences that most people in the world would not have. But thanks be to Chukwu, I survived to tell my story. Igbo religion and culture, this traces it all the way from Abraham. I will pause here. I will urge you to subscribe to my channel. The information from the Igbo needs to join the discourse because it will bring peace. It will bring reconciliation. Thank you.